WADR.org.
Monday to Sunday.
It's hard to explain, okay? But
All day. All year round.
it's so mysterious.
This is who we are.
This is who we are.
WADR.
News, talk, music, get it all
24 hours.
on West Africa Democracy Radio. 94.9 FM Dakar.
WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Cotonou. Good evening and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at wadr.org. Here are the top stories. Senegal and Mali reaffirm military commitment amid jihadist attacks at both countries' borders. Nigerian army denies U.S. accusations of Christian genocide.
Well, we're facing insecurity, especially terrorism, but I want to make it categorically clear here that no Christian is being persecuted in Nigeria.
Benin's parliament postpones hearing into proposed constitutional revision bill. And Togo launches nationwide awareness against prostate cancer.
Prostate cancer is one of the most common types of cancer affecting men. Many men still believe that getting tested questions their masculinity.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
We are glad to have you joining us this evening. This edition begins with some military-related development as military officers in Senegal and Mali have reaffirmed their commitment to enhancing military cooperation. This commitment was re-emphasized on Wednesday during a meeting in which Senegalese Minister of the Armed Forces, General Biram Diop, welcomed a delegation from the Malian Army led by Colonel Major Oumar Maïga, the technical advisor for cooperation at Mali's Ministry of Defense and Veteran Affairs. The discussions centered on strengthening military cooperation between the two nations with a long-standing history of cooperation in defense and security. This initiative comes in response to the deteriorating security situation in Mali and the increasing threat of jihadist groups near Senegal's borders. Abdoulaye Hassan tells us more.
This military visit comes at a challenging time for Mali, which is facing security threats worsened by fuel shortages that have persisted for several weeks. These shortages result from embargoes imposed by the jihadist group JNIM and repeated attacks on supply convoys carried out by the same organization. The military agreement is part of ongoing bilateral cooperation between the two countries, strengthened since the beginning of 2025 by various joint initiatives in the security, economic, and diplomatic fields. In February, Dakar and Bamako initiated joint patrols in the Djibouti border region near Kaye to confront the JNIM threat and enhance cross-border security. This commitment follows high-level visits by Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye to Mali in May 2024, as well as visits from Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko in August and Special Envoy Abdoulaye Bathily in October 2024. Despite regional turbulence and Mali's withdrawal from ECOWAS in January 2025, both countries continue to prioritize practical and supportive cooperation, focusing on regional stability and the fight against terrorism at cross-border levels.
Abdoulaye Hassan fight that report elsewhere. Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Olufemi Oluyede, has dismissed allegations by U.S. President Donald Trump that Christians have been prosecuted in the country. Speaking in Abuja after a meeting with other security chiefs, the CDS said Nigeria's security challenges are rooted in terrorism and banditry, not religious persecution. He reaffirmed the government's commitment to tackling insecurity and expressed openness to international cooperation in the fight against terrorism.
We're just coming out from the General Security Appraiser Committee meeting. Though this is a very special one, it's something we do periodically, but this was specifically convened because of the current development where Nigeria is being accused of persecuting Christians. But I want to make it categorically clear here, there are no Christians being persecuted in Nigeria. We are facing insecurity, especially terrorism, and it's something that's been affecting Nigeria for quite some time now. But as a group, talking about security heads, we've been doing our very best to checkmate this act of terrorism within the space of Nigeria. And you will recall recently, that's just last week, the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, recalibrated the security architecture by bringing on board officers of proven integrity who are seasoned in asymmetric warfare to add impetus to our operations. I want to assure Nigerians going forward that we're going to add more to what we're doing, add more impetus to our operations, and ensure that we checkmate this act of terrorism within Nigeria. And you know very well that terrorism is a global issue, it's a global problem. There are several countries that are challenged in that respect, and it calls for collective effort. So if we have countries out there who are ready to support Nigeria,
Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Olufumi Oluyede, speaking. At the same time, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has expressed its steadfast support for Nigeria amid accusations of religious persecution leveled by the United States President. The regional organization refutes these claims, emphasizing that terrorist violence impacts all communities without discrimination. As Sankolo Janko reports, U.S. President Donald Trump has accused the Nigerian government of failing to end what he refers to as Christian genocide.
Echoes in its response to U.S. President Donald Trump's accusations of Christian genocide in Nigeria highlighted the non-discriminatory nature of terrorist attacks. The sub-regional organization affirmed that extremists target all civilian groups, including Muslims, Christians, and followers of other faiths. The organization urges that such narratives could exacerbate insecurity and disrupt social harmony in West Africa, calling on the United Nations and global allies to assist member countries in combating terrorist threats. It further urges the international community to reject unfounded claims targeting specific religious groups or suggesting genocide in the sub-region, describing them as misleading and harmful. The organization concludes by appealing for unified global support in addressing terrorism, noting that it remains a threat to all communities without exception. President Bola Tinubu's spokesperson, Daniel Bwala, had stated the government's intent to collaborate with international partners to bolster national security after Donald Trump labeled Nigeria as a country of particular concern. While the American leader also threatens a potential military intervention in Nigeria if no action is taken, it is important to note that independent reports compiled over recent years consistently confirm that terrorism-related violence does not target individuals based on gender, religion, or ethnicity.
Sankolo Janko reporting there. Meanwhile, Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has requested the National Assembly to approve a new domestic loan of 1.15 trillion naira, approximately $8.4 billion, to help finance the country's 2025 budget deficit. The president's request was contained in a letter read during Tuesday's plenary session of the Senate. WADR's Usma Umar reports from Abuja.
According to the letter, the borrowing is aimed at bridging the funding gap in the fiscal year and ensuring full implementation of government programs and projects. The request, which comes amid rising debt concerns and a fragile economy, is part of the administration's strategy to sustain budgetary commitments and stimulate growth through public investment. Senate President Godswill Akpabio referred the request to the Senate Committee on Local and Foreign Debt for further legislative action with a directive to submit a report within a week.
National Assembly passed a budget of 59.9 trillion, an increase of 5.25 trillion from the 49.74 trillion budget proposal by the executive. This increase created a budget deficit of 14 trillion. However, the proposed borrowing approved in the budget was 12.95 trillion, which occasioned an unfunded deficit of 1.1 trillion. It is therefore necessary to increase the domestic borrowing limit in the 2025 budget by 1.147 trillion to close this gap.
Nigeria's public debt continues to grow, with recent figures from the Debt Management Office showing the country's total debt stock passing 121 trillion naira or $846.15 billion as of mid-2025. The new request, if approved, will further expand the domestic borrowing component of the national debt portfolio. Analysts warn that while borrowing remains a tool for development, excessive reliance on debt could threaten fiscal stability, especially in an economy struggling with inflation, subsidy removal impacts, and dwindling foreign reserves. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Well, let's now focus on some political developments. In neighboring Benin, President Patrice Talon has spoken about current political developments in the country. In a special interview on Tuesday, Talon touched on issues of national interests, such as the electoral calendar for the 2026 general elections. He also highlighted matters arising from the reform of Benin's political party system to the fate of the opposition Democrats Party and the race to succeed him. Imo Edit has more in this report.
During the special interview late Tuesday, Patrice Talon responded to several emerging concerns regarding the rejection of the candidacy files of the main opposition Democrats Party presidential candidate. After a legal battle, Talon clarified without hesitation.
Everyone involved has signed parliamentary governance agreements except for the Democrats, who refused. The Prime Minister also prohibited the Democrats from signing any agreement with any party, including the FCBE. Despite being a moderate opposition party, the FCB's agreement could have been crucial. But the Democrats signed a parliamentary governance pact with the FCBE. Their presidential candidate, though, might not have faltered, even in the face of defections within their ranks.
While President Talon acknowledges that a presidential election without the main opposition party tarnishes the integrity of the electoral process, he rejects calls for reform of the political party system and the electoral code.
I must admit that the current state of electoral dynamics is far from satisfying me. It tarnishes the image of our country. However, this doesn't mean we should blame the reform of the partisan system, not the electoral code. As someone who has become both the scapegoat for President Boniai and a convenient target for everything going wrong with the Democrats, what else can I say to avoid being condemned? I'm the perfect culprit.
Patrice Talon accused his predecessor, Yayi Boni, of sabotaging all the reforms and public policies of his government, regardless of the sector. Over the past few weeks, tensions have escalated between Boni Yayi, the leader of the opposition Democrats Party, and the current President Talon. Both have leveled accusations against each other, claiming efforts to interfere with and manipulate Benin's political landscape.
Imo Edit with the details of WADR's Aziz Adam Sule's report from Cotonou. Still in Benin, the plenary session dedicated to reviewing the Constitution, which opened this Wednesday at the National Assembly, has been postponed. No new date has yet been announced for the resumption of the proceedings. This postponement comes amid heated debates over the proposed constitutional revision, which has drawn significant attention and concerns from various political and civic actors. As a reminder, the proposed constitutional amendment was introduced in Parliament by presidents of the parliamentary groups of the Renewal and Bloc Republican MPs Akei Natonde and Hassan Seibu. Let's now cross over to Guinea, where several opposition political parties and some civil society actors have rejected the transitional president, General Mamadi Doumbouya's candidacy. They accuse him of betraying his oath and his commitment to handing over power to civilians at the end of the transition. In a strong statement following Doumbouya's candidacy for the December 28 presidential election, the Forces Vives of Guinea denounced his decision, describing it as a betrayal of the transitional oath. This political coalition includes political parties such as the UFDG of Selu Dalan Jallo, the UFR of Sida Touré, and the RPG Asensio former President Alpha Conde. According to the coalition, the transitional President General Doumbouya is trampling on transitional charter and violating his commitment before the Supreme Court, the people of Guinea, and the international community. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal, and also live at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegal and Mali reaffirmed military commitment amid jihadist attacks at both countries' borders. Nigerian army denies U.S. accusations of Christian genocide. Benin's parliament postpones hearing into proposed constitutional revision bill. Still ahead in the news, Togo launches nationwide awareness against prostate cancer. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for being with us. We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Now, away from politics, a coalition of justice advocates is calling on the Liberian government to address critical delays hindering the establishment of War and Economic Crimes Court and the National Anti-Corruption Court. Concerns are growing over the creation of these institutions, despite President Joseph Boakai's executive orders 131 and 148 authorizing their existence. A section of the Liberian civil society already doubts the government's commitment to accountability. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Ibrahim Parker reports.
The group alleges that the government is undermining the court's establishment through insufficient budgetary support. Adolphus Kapat says Liberians have endured pain and seek justice from these criminals, some of whom remain protected within government institutions.
We are very disappointed. We have investigated and found out that for the entire 1 year, this office has operated two things on its funding, have kept it down.
The debate surrounded two bills introduced by Senate Pro Tempore Nyobli Kanga Lawrence and Senator Joseph Jala, both aimed at establishing the same code. Critics argue that these bills contradict Joint Resolution number 001/2024 and deviate from the 2021 bill proposed by the Liberian National Bar Association, which stipulated the inclusion of a foreign justice to ensure impartiality. Senator Joseph Jala defends his argument.
These two courts are created under the auspices of the Liberian Constitution. When a trial go on, if you are found guilty, you will take an appeal to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will hear your appeal. Whatever the Supreme Court will say will be final.
But the coalition of justice advocates openly criticizes these parallel legislative efforts.
We are afraid that a set of new developments that have occurred will affect and derail this process if we do not swiftly, in the best interest of our country and our people, permit us to highlight these problems.
The COS are demanding the immediate release of finance, enhanced security for staff, and a halt to the Senate's competing legislative initiatives. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Let's quickly leave the West African sub-region for Chad, where at least 17 people have died and several others injured following violent intercommunal clashes on Tuesday. The first conflict occurred in Biblau, located in the Mayo Kebbi West province, where farmers clashed with herders after a field was destroyed during the harvest season. During this confrontation, the owner of the field was reportedly killed by the herders, prompting the farmers to retaliate violently, resulting in the deaths of 3 more individuals. A second clash took place in the Adidebe region in the Hajem Lames province, where members of the Bulala and Gurane communities violently opposed each other. Both communities have evacuated women and children to neighboring areas, raising concerns about further escalation of the violence. As the situation remains tense, no official statement has yet been issued by the Chadian authorities. Now to some health matters. Togo has launched its national awareness campaign dedicated to the fight against male cancers. Each year, this campaign highlights a cause too often overlooked: men's health, particularly prostate cancer. This month is entirely devoted to this information. According to the Togolese Cancer Control Organization, more than 500 cases were diagnosed in 2022, with 294 deaths recorded. Stephen Awetie is president of the Togolese League Against Cancer.
Prostate cancer is one of the most common types of cancer affecting men. Unfortunately, it is still surrounded by numerous stereotypes and taboos. Many men still believe that getting tested questions their masculinity or feel ashamed to even discuss it. Others fear the results or assume it only happens to others. This kind of mindset often delays early diagnosis. November has been designated as a month to raise awareness about prostate and testicular cancer, serving as a time of action with solidarity similar to how Pink October focuses on women's health. We encourage all men to visit participating centers and take advantage of the discounted screening campaign, which will run until Friday, November 28. Turning prevention into a regular habit is something we strongly urge all men to embrace.
Stephen Awite is president of Togo's League Against Cancer.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Well, our guest interview segment this evening focuses on the raging Nigeria-US saga, which is attracting attention from several quarters, institutions, and governments. The Chinese government, through its foreign ministry on Tuesday, backed Nigeria, just as the sub-regional body ECOWAS made its stance known. The Economic Community of West African States insists that terrorism affects communities regardless of gender, religion, or political affiliation. It further calls on the global community to support nations in their fight against terrorism. But can ECOWAS move from statement to action? And how crucial is the deployment of the standby force? Dr. Salahuddin Hashim, regional security expert, explains first by highlighting the gap in Nigeria's foreign policy alignment.
I think fundamentally, Nigeria lost an opportunity to put forward its robust diplomatic stature when to appoint career ambassadors in the last 2 years, not just only to the U.S., but again to most parts of the globe. And that is where quite a number of diplomatic shuttles oftentimes happen. Even if there had been some rhetoric to the U.S., those diplomatic community become the first point of contact where those counter-narratives would have happened. But unfortunately, we don't have it. Two is that our foreign policy independence very lately has also influenced what is currently happening. And the question that readily comes to mind is that, is this issue of religion or retribution? If it is an issue of religion, then of course it suggests very clearly that there is a clear balancing in terms of threat. And that is because threat does not select its victim. There has been a universal attacks both on every form of tribes and religion in the country in the past 1 decade. The recently concluded UN General Assembly, the Nigerian government took a stance on the issue of Palestine and Gaza, and that was a direct jab on the allies of US. And most importantly is that the recent hobnobbing of Nigeria with the BRICS nation has also thrown up a lot of concern.
So, Dr. Salah, whether it's a case of a retribution, like you said, or not, is this more like a wake-up call to the government to do the needful?
We cannot take away the fact that for the past decade, Nigeria has been confronted very largely with a very high rate of insecurity. And this is a total challenge that unfortunately both the state and its security apparatus have failed to be able to manage. And despite the fact that we have also designed national security strategy and the national counterterrorism framework to be able to help us contain and prevent all of this, we have not found the module to be able to adequately implement this document. And it is also because of the corruption that has been embedded within the defense architecture, where people have now commercialized the entire insecurity and made it a paradox of plenty. So the more money you pump into defense and security architecture, the larger the scale of insecurity. So that is a fact. You cannot controvert it. And that is because a number of efforts to mitigate some of this approach over time, government has failed. The issue of ungoverned spaces, porous border, governance issue, and other socio-economic indicators that are continuing.
Now, here we are. The ECOWAS has joined to react to the recent accusation leveled against the Nigerian government for allowing Christian genocide to take place. What do you make of that statement? Is it just enough that it has issued a statement backing up Nigeria, or should it go beyond that to having a holistic approach now to fighting insurgency, terrorism, and all forms of criminality in countries of West Africa?
My point is very clear that ECOWAS itself has become an institution that can only back but cannot bite. Since the transition from ECOWAS of the states to ECOWAS of the people, ECOWAS has not demonstrated the capability to allow the voices of citizens within the membership states to influence its policies. And that is because, again, there are leadership within the region that have held tight to power for quite a while, and ECOWAS has not been able to yield to the voice of the people or develop a mechanism that allows that transition to indeed operationalize and have some level of direct impact. And that is the reason why the backing of ECOWAS to Nigeria may not actually translate into anything or yield any sort of value. And that is because it is very clear that ECOWAS would continue to amplify the leadership of the state rather than the voices of the people. And I think, again, even though it is strategic, but I don't see the value that that particular alliance or support might translate to.
And do you think it's about time that ECOWAS really pushes on with the operationalization of the standby force?
Yes, the ECOWAS standby force is a huge resource, but how you use it is also very fundamental. But for me, I think generally there is also the issue of accountability that needs to also be further interrogated within the funding for the ECOWAS standby force in terms of how they have been able to resource them lately, and each member state also willing to contribute to the standby force. And that for me is also the fundamental. Every country within the region now has their own particular problem. So, and most of their men are already overstretched. How do you want to extract from already lean resources to contribute to engage in this very strategic assignment? I think for me, it is something to also review once again.
Dr. Salahuddin Hashim is a regional security expert. Now, in the world of sports, Cameroon, Egypt, Cote d'Ivoire, and Mali will complete the lineup for the 2026 Women's Africa Cup of Nations WAFCON after world rankings were used to determine the final four qualifiers. The Confederation of African Football (CAF) took the decision to expand the finals from 12 to 16 teams midway through preliminary for next year's tournament in Morocco. Reigning champions Nigeria were among 11 sides to book their tickets in the second and final qualifying round last month, and those eliminated at that stage had hope of having another chance to reach North Africa via potential playoffs. In Europe, coming up tonight, but just at the moment with 42nd minutes of play, Karabakh of Azerbaijan is leading Chelsea 2-1. Valerius is still trailing alongside Pafos with 43 minutes of play, 0 at peace. Coming up at 8 p.m., Hajar of the Netherlands will welcome Galatasaray of Turkey. Benfica of Portugal will welcome German side Bayer Leverkusen. Club Brugge of Belgium will welcome Spanish side Barcelona. The Italian giant Inter Milan will welcome Kid Amara. Manchester City takes on Borussia Dortmund tonight, while Marseille will take on Atalanta and Newcastle welcomes Athletic Bilbao. Those are some of the top stories in the world of sports. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. And many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Ismaila Kamara for the technical support. I am Augustine Kelly. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and